Is that her? I whispered. Daniel didn't answer, because he didn't have to. I knew. I knew by the way his hand tensed in mine, by how his smile faltered when her heels touched the white stone pathway, by the way she stood, confident, polished, like someone who'd once belonged in this story. Allison, his ex, at our wedding, and no one had told me. My breath hitched. A sudden cold dread snaked up my spine as I saw her, the girl in the green dress, cutting through the crowd like she had every right to be there. My name is Lena Hart, and on the day I thought I'd be starting a life of transparency and trust, I discovered my marriage had started with a lie of omission. We had been planning this wedding for almost a year. I designed every piece down to the font on the place cards. I made sure the favors reflected us. Coffee beans from our first date cafe, handwritten thank you notes, photos from our engagement shoot tucked into the guest book. It was personal, intentional, sacred, and he invited her, without a word. To understand the weight of that, you have to understand me. I don't come from clean endings. My father left. My mother raised me on teaching assistant paychecks and leftover pasta. We didn't do closure. We did surviving. So when I met Daniel, calm, structured, emotionally grounded Daniel, it felt like finally, I had found someone who didn't come with unexpected baggage. He felt like solid ground after years adrift at sea. I clung to that promise of peace. And to be fair, when he mentioned Allison, it sounded harmless. She was important, he said, early in our relationship. But it's over. We're friends now, from a distance. He'd said it with a shrug, perhaps a fraction too casually, avoiding my gaze for just a second. I asked questions, not to be jealous, but because I needed to know. He gave me just enough to feel secure, and not enough to doubt him. She moved away, he said. We don't talk much. I didn't ask again, because I trusted him. The morning of our wedding, everything felt surreal. The dress zipped smoothly. My mom cried. My best friend Elise shoved a mimosa into my hand and told me I looked like a Pinterest board come to life. I felt ready. Daniel had sent me a note. Short, sweet, typed in all caps on a card that smelled like his cologne. No matter what happens today, you're the best decision I've ever made. I'll be waiting for you at the end of the aisle, always. D. I smiled when I read it. Now I wish I'd read it twice. Maybe I would have seen the hollow behind the words. The ceremony was beautiful, classic, not flashy. Strings played, the breeze was gentle. People dabbed their eyes while we said our vows. He looked at me like I was the only person in the world. And maybe, for a second, I believed I was. But the illusion cracked just 30 minutes into the reception, when I stepped onto the dance floor and saw her. The girl in the green dress, Allison. Her hair was longer than in the photos Daniel had once shown me. She looked older, more refined, but I recognized her instantly. She didn't look around like a stranger. She walked through the tables like she'd helped arrange them, like she knew where everything belonged, like she once had. I turned to Daniel, smiling but sharp. Is that Allison? He froze, then gave the smallest nod. Yeah, she's here. He said it simply, almost matter-of-factly, without a flicker of apology or understanding of what her presence meant to me. I stared at him, stunned. You didn't tell me she was invited. I didn't think it mattered. Didn't think it mattered. The woman he once called the only person who ever understood him was now drinking champagne at our wedding, and he didn't think I needed to know. Elise pulled me aside not long after. Are you okay? She asked, scanning my face. She's here, I whispered. He invited her. Elise's jaw clenched. You're kidding. Nope, she paused. Lena, what do you want to do? I don't know yet. Because I didn't. I didn't want to cause a scene. I didn't want to ruin the night for our families, but I also didn't want to pretend I was okay with this. Dinner passed like a dream I didn't want to be in. I smiled when people raised glasses. I thanked my aunt for the blender. I danced with my little cousin like nothing was broken. But underneath, every nerve felt frayed, constantly tracking Allison's movements across the room, fighting the urge to scream or flee. Daniel tried to pull me in for a slow dance. I let him, but I barely looked at him. He kept whispering, "We'll talk later," like that would fix the burn in my chest. But then came the moment that broke me. The bouquet toss. I didn't want to do it. I almost skipped it entirely. But people begged. It's tradition, they said, just for fun. So I turned, laughing through clenched teeth, and tossed the flowers over my shoulder into the waiting crowd. There was a cheer, a flash of green fabric, and then Allison stood in the center of the women, holding the bouquet. The music seemed to warp. The laughter sounded distant. The air thickened. She looked down at the bouquet in her hands, then up, and met my eyes. Her expression wasn't smug, just composed, familiar. Like this moment belonged to her too. And in that second, I realized something worse than betrayal. He hadn't just invited her, he had made space for her. The laughter continued. People were still clapping. Someone shouted, "Ooh, Allison," with a cheeky grin. I didn't move. My vision tunneled slightly. Elise's voice seemed to come from far away as she pulled me from the center of the room, her hand like an anchor I didn't know I needed. The bouquet was still in Allison's hands when the door closed behind us. I sat on the edge of the vanity bench, my dress bunched around me like it didn't belong to me anymore. "She caught it," I whispered. "She caught the bouquet." Elise stood in front of me, arms crossed, eyes stormy. "She shouldn't have even been here." "I don't think it was an accident." "What do you mean?" "I think he knew. I think Daniel wanted her to be here." Elise's jaw tensed. "Do you want me to talk to him?" I shook my head. "No, I will." I found him behind the venue near the catering van, talking to one of the coordinators. He looked surprised when he saw me. "Lena, everything okay?" I didn't answer. I just said, "I need to talk to you, now." He followed me around the side of the building, where it was quiet. The music from the reception was muffled, like it belonged to another world. I turned to him. "You invited her." His face tightened. "I told you. Yes. You didn't just invite her. She caught the bouquet, Daniel." "I didn't plan that. Didn't you?" His expression darkened. "What exactly are you accusing me of?" "I don't know. Maybe of protecting her feelings more than mine." He ran a hand through his hair, refusing to meet my eyes now. "I saw her," he said quietly, the words almost lost to the wind. "You didn't think it was important to tell me she'd be here?" I asked, voice lower now. "She's part of my past, Lena, but we ended on good terms. I thought inviting her was harmless." "Harmless? On our wedding day?" His shoulders tensed. "She RSVP'd last minute. I didn't want to stress you." A month ago? While I was addressing invitations? While we were tasting cakes? The casualness of the timeline felt like another betrayal, like he was letting two versions of reality run in parallel, one for me and one he didn't want to explain. "I needed closure," he added after a pause. Or maybe I thought, I just needed to know I was making the right decision. I blinked. The words were knives. "The right decision? It's not what you think," he said quickly. It made me realize how much I wanted you. I swear. I stepped back. So you used her to validate marrying me? I didn't sleep with her. I didn't ask. But you thought it, didn't you? That's not the point, Daniel. The point is, you met your ex-girlfriend a month before our wedding and didn't tell me. Then you invited her, and she caught the bouquet. It wasn't planned. Everything about this feels planned. There was silence. Behind us, laughter, plates clinking, my wedding playing out like a backdrop to something I never agreed to. I looked at the man I thought I knew, the man who promised safety, and saw only shifting shadows and convenient truths. The foundation crumbled completely. I need to go, I said. Lena, I need air. Please, don't let this ruin everything. He reached for me, but I stepped away, because whatever we were supposed to be, this wasn't it. I walked past the dance floor, past the lights, past the tables, and that's when Allison stepped into my path. Lena, she said gently, wait, can I talk to you? I turned to her. My voice was cold. You've said enough. I didn't throw the bouquet back because I didn't want to cause a scene. Then why did you come at all? She hesitated, and for a moment I saw something, a flicker of pain, a trace of guilt. I didn't come for him, she said. I came to see if he was telling the truth. I froze. What truth? She looked me straight in the eye. That he was in love with you. The words hung there, absurd and yet terrifyingly plausible, given everything else. My mind reeled. He had said he wanted closure, but maybe what he really wanted was proof, and maybe I'd been the final test, not the final choice. After Allison said it, that he was in love with you, I didn't speak. I didn't scream. I didn't slap her or make a scene or cry in the corner like the wounded bride I guess I was supposed to be. I just stood there, because something deeper than anger was settling in. Certainty. A kind that doesn't feel like relief. A kind that feels like grief disguised as clarity. I walked back into the bridal suite and locked the door behind me. My reflection in the mirror looked ghost-like. My eyes were too wide, my cheeks too pale. The lipstick I'd reapplied twice was now smudged at the corners. I didn't look married. I looked haunted. On the table beside the mirror was the note Daniel had written me that morning. No matter what happens today, you're the best decision I've ever made. I stared at the word decision. Not love of my life, not forever. Decision, a choice, a verdict, a calculation. And I couldn't unhear what Allison had said. I came to see if he was telling the truth. He had told her he loved me, but he needed her to believe it too. As if her belief somehow made it real. There's a kind of betrayal that comes not from cheating or secrets, but from being someone's second thought, someone's safer option. I was not his sanctuary. I was his conclusion. And the ache that came with that was worse than rage. Elise found me an hour later. Everyone thought we were changing outfits for our grand exit. But the truth was, I hadn't moved. Elise, I whispered, I can't do this. She knelt in front of me, soft and steady. You don't have to. But it's done. We're married. She looked at me long and hard. You walked down the aisle, yes, but nothing is finished unless you say it is. I'm scared. You're allowed to be. What if I regret it? What if you stay and regret it even more? We left through the back. No rice, no cheers, no sparkler arch, just Elise's hand in mine and the hum of crickets rising through the trees. She took me to her apartment, gave me makeup remover and a sweatshirt, and sat beside me while I slowly pulled the pins from my hair one by one. Each one felt like I was undoing a lie. Daniel didn't call that night, or the next morning. Instead, his mother did. Lena, she said, her voice tight. We were so worried. Is everything okay? No, I replied calmly. But thank you for asking. A pause. You should come back. Talk to him. I will. but not today. Don't throw everything away over a misunderstanding." "I'm not throwing it away," I said. "I'm setting it down before it breaks everything in me." She didn't respond, but I knew she heard me. When I finally saw Daniel again, it was 3 days later. He was standing on the porch of our apartment, looking more like a boy than a husband. Sleeves rolled, eyes rimmed red, holding the bouquet. Yes, that bouquet. "I thought you'd want it," he said. "I don't." He held it anyway. "Lena, please, can we talk?" "We did talk, and you told me everything I needed to know." "That I loved you?" I shook my head. "That you loved me enough to marry me, but not enough to risk honesty. That you needed your ex's approval to feel secure in our future." His voice cracked. "It wasn't about her. It was about me, about being sure." "And were you?" He hesitated, and that was my answer. I stepped forward, gently took the bouquet from his hands, and laid it down on the steps between us. "I would have forgiven the invitation," I said, "even the meeting, but I can't forgive being made someone's proof." Tears slipped down his face. "I thought I was choosing you," he whispered. "You weren't choosing me," I replied. "You were choosing comfort." I walked back to Elise's car. The wind picked up behind me. I didn't look back, because this wasn't about vengeance or drama or making a point. This was about reclaiming the ending and choosing the only person who had chosen me fully from the beginning, myself. 3 weeks. That's how long it took for the world to stop spinning. Not completely, but enough. Enough to wake up and not feel the weight of a white dress still clinging to my ribs. Enough to stand in the grocery store and not picture Allison holding that bouquet like it belonged to her more than it ever belonged to me. Enough to admit that I was not okay. But I was still moving. Elise let me stay in her guest room, even though it was technically a storage room with a futon. We made it livable. Painted the walls soft gray. Bought eucalyptus-scented candles. She kept the kitchen stocked with tea and never once asked when I planned to go back. Every morning she left a Post-it on the fridge. "Still here? Make toast. Take a breath. You don't owe anyone your silence." I stopped wearing the ring after day 5. It wasn't an announcement, just a quiet decision, a small surrender to truth, because love, when buried under doubt and omission, doesn't shine. It rusts. I started walking again. Not fast, not far, just around the block. I'd put my earbuds in, press play on some slow acoustic playlist, and let my feet carry me. One day, I walked past a church. Not ours. Smaller, older, peeling paint, a cracked sidewalk with tiny weeds pushing through. I stood outside for a long time, staring at the front steps. There was a wedding going on inside. I could hear laughter, clapping. Someone had tied white ribbon around the iron railings. And yet, for the first time, I didn't flinch. I didn't feel envy, or bitterness, or loss. Just release. Later that night, I opened a new notebook. The old one was filled with lists, wedding to-dos, guest counts, florist invoices, honeymoon notes. This one would be different. At the top of the first page, I wrote, "Things I forgot to want before I forgot myself." Then I began, to learn how to cook without measuring every ingredient. To dye my hair that copper shade I always hesitated to try. To spend a Sunday doing nothing and not feel guilty. To travel somewhere just because it's quiet. To build a life that doesn't ask for anyone's permission. On day 24, a package arrived at Elise's apartment addressed to me. I didn't recognize the sender. Inside, a small envelope and a USB drive. No note, just initials pressed into the paper. A. Allison. My stomach nodded. "Elise," I called out, "can you sit with me?" We plugged the drive into her laptop. There was one file, a video. Allison appeared on the screen, sitting in a dimly lit room. No makeup, no performance. "Hi, Lena," she said softly. "If you're watching this, it's because I needed to say something, but I didn't want to say it at your wedding. That moment wasn't mine." She looked down, exhaled. "I know what it feels like to be the woman who almost was. And I know what it feels like to be the woman someone loves, in fragments. I held my breath. Daniel is a good man in many ways, but he needs mirrors to see himself. I was one for a long time. I think you became one too. She looked into the camera again. You deserve to be more than someone else's reflection. And then, after a beat, I caught the bouquet because no one else reached for it, but if I could give it back to you, I would. The screen faded to black. I didn't cry. I didn't throw the USB across the room. I just sat there. Because somewhere in that complicated message from a woman I had once silently hated, I felt something unfamiliar, understanding, not of her, of me. Elise turned to me. What are you going to do? I looked at her, and for the first time I said, live. It's strange how time moves differently after a heartbreak. It doesn't crawl. It doesn't sprint. It just softens. Edges round out. The ache dulls. The silence doesn't echo as loudly. And slowly, so slowly you almost don't notice, life begins to speak again. Not in declarations, in small invitations. A month after the wedding, that wasn't. I moved out of Elise's. She hugged me like she was sending a soldier off to battle, even though I was just driving 10 minutes across town. I'd found a studio apartment on the second floor of an old brownstone. It had chipped tile in the kitchen and the faint smell of paint lingering in the walls. But it was mine. There was no Daniel in the closet, no bouquet in the corner, no framed promises on the wall. Just space. Space to be. I started working with a local women's nonprofit. Ironically, the same one I had once declined because I was too busy with wedding planning. Now I was busy with something else, rebuilding, but not as a project, as a person. I led workshops for high school girls. I helped write grants. I stayed late, not because anyone expected me to, but because it felt good to pour myself into something that didn't revolve around someone else's love. One Friday afternoon, we hosted a community event. There were booths and speakers and a small celebration to honor volunteers. The final activity was meant to be symbolic, a bouquet toss, not for marriage, but for new beginnings. The bouquet was made of wildflowers, unstructured, messy, beautiful. The crowd laughed as it was tossed into the air. I stood near the back, not even planning to reach for it. But somehow, maybe by accident, maybe not, it landed in my hands. I looked down at it, stunned. Everyone clapped. And for a moment, I didn't feel like a punchline. I didn't feel like the girl who got left behind at her own reception. I felt like the woman who finally caught something on her own terms. After the event, I walked home slowly, the bouquet still in my arms. It had no ribbon, no tradition wrapped around it. Just petals, color, weight, and meaning I gave it, not meaning someone else had handed me. I didn't hear from Daniel again, not directly. He sent one letter. It arrived 6 weeks after the wedding. I never opened it. I didn't need his words anymore, because I'd found my own. One evening, I sat on the floor of my new apartment with a candle flickering on the windowsill. The city breathed outside, not loud, not quiet, just alive. I opened my notebook, things I forgot to want before I forgot myself. I added a new line, to hold something beautiful and not wonder who's watching, and one more, to know that love will come again, and when it does, I'll meet it as me, not someone else's echo. There are stories we grow up dreaming of, fairy tales, grand romances, the one who got away, or the one who stayed. But there's another story too, one we're never taught to want, the story where the girl walks away, the story where she loses the wedding and finds herself, and maybe, just maybe, that's the best love story of all.